The Razer Kitsune released as Razer's new flagship fighting game controller, but at a price of $300, its value and features were not worth it for many. But now, with Haute42 or CosmoX's new M Plus controllers, you can get that same quality for a fraction of the price. It comes in this cardboard box with a little information sticker at the top left with the controller's dimensions, as well as what comes packaged alongside the controller. Inside, the controller is protected with the foam stuck to the top and a bit of foam at the bottom, with the controller inside of a plastic sleeve. Inside, you'll find the controller, an instructions manual with different shortcuts, an angled USB-C cable, and a little bag with a key switch puller, replacement crystal key switch, and replacement menu caps. With it plugged in, let's go over the controller. First off, with the angled USB-C connector, it moves it out of the way so it's not dangling outward, so it can help for cable management. Let's go over a couple of differences between this and the Razer Kitsune, with the first one being the addition of these 4 extra buttons. They do offer a model with just the 12 action buttons, so if you prefer that over the 16 button layout, you can definitely go for that, which is more like the Razer Kitsune. Another difference to take into consideration is that for the Razer Kitsune, these 11 buttons are smaller, while their jump button is bigger. For the M Plus controllers, all of the buttons are the same size, including the jump button. Menu buttons have a nice click to them, and they aren't very hard to press, so they won't hurt your fingers like how they do on some controllers, so pausing or resetting training won't be an issue. Over at the top left, we have our input viewer, which lights up as we press our buttons, and this is possible because it's running GP2040CE firmware, which I'll go over more later. Now as we check the side profile, you'll notice it's made up of a thin metal panel at the bottom with a much thicker metal panel at the top, and sandwiched in between each layer is a layer of acrylic. The bottom has 4 rubber feet in each corner, that way it doesn't slip around when using it on your table. As for lap plate, you don't need to buy any additional foam or rubber to have it not slip around, as it's pretty weighty and the material doesn't have any issues with slipping around. If you look at the top, in the middle is a tiny button you can press with something like a mechanical pencil as you plug in your controller for updating. But it's not entirely needed, as you can use the much easier shortcut of start, select, and up as you plug in your controller for the same result. Because the controller uses GP2040CE firmware, the top has our USB-C port and a USB-A port for adapters like the Mayflash V1.1, Brookwingman FGC, and even Haute42's new Booter 5 adapter, which all allow for use on the PS5. However, the biggest difference for compatibility is that the Razer Kitsune is an officially licensed PS5 controller, meaning it can be used on all PS5 games. But with this controller, with an adapter you can play on all PS4 games, but as for the PS5 you can only use it for fighting games. The benefit of this model is that with the price of the controller and the adapter, you're spending around 140 USD, or maybe a little more depending on where you buy it from, which is still significantly cheaper than the $300 plus price tag of the Razer Kitsune. Now here's a closer look at the keycaps for this, and when you lift them up, keep in mind that the switch inside gets pulled up a little, so you just want to press it down with a little force. This model doesn't have the same issue the original M series had, where the switches were all mounted slanted and you had to push them down yourself, and these all come properly mounted and sit flat so you don't have to worry. And this is how the switches look outside of the controller. For these new switches, the tension is a bit different from the red switches, where if you've tried one of their other controllers, it just presses straight down, but with the crystal switches, they go straight down until you hit the center of the press, where it's a bit more firm, and I believe this is because they are tactile switches. Because of the metal design and because it's black, it tracks a lot of sweat that you can see on the controller. So for example, here you can see there's a bit of sweat left behind on it, but this isn't a deal breaker though, since you can easily clean it off and it doesn't stay on for long. To access the web configurator, you'll want to hold start when you plug in your controller and make your way to this URL. If you want to start using adapters, you don't need to make any changes like you had to with previous controllers, as this is already on the 0.7.7 firmware and it's on a custom Haute42 build. But as for customization, I'll go over how to change your button inputs, make the LEDs turn off when your system is idle or turned off, how to make the display show all 16 buttons, as well as how to add a custom image to the LED display, and finally, how to update the controller. Before making any changes, you'll want to go to the Configuration tab, Data Backup and Restoration, and save a copy of your current configuration. That way if anything goes wrong, you can always load the file and restore to default settings. So now to change the inputs for your buttons, go to the Configuration tab again, Pin Mappings, and here you can see all the mappings for each pin. For this video, I'll only focus on the main additional 4 buttons, which are these 4, and the pin mappings are as follows: Pin 27, Pin 18, Pin 26, and Pin 19. Now by default, these 2 buttons are both mapped to L3, and then these other 2 buttons are both mapped to up, with that bottom button being Pin 2, and then at the bottom right we have the R3 button. If you're a casual player, you can honestly ignore this step, but for those concerned with tournament legality, as far as Street Fighter goes, you cannot have 2 buttons with the same input, and you also need to unbind one of your action buttons, as I believe you can only have 11. Personally, I like to disable this top right L3 button, as I like to use this bottom left one for drive impact. So to do so, I'll just go to the web configurator and unbind the button by pressing this X, which sets the input to none, so now it is unbound. I also disable this top left button as I don't need it personally, but go ahead and make these changes as you see fit for your personal needs. Now remember, once you finish making your changes, you want to scroll all the way down to the save button to save your changes and make sure that they actually apply when you reset your controller. When your computer is at rest or turns off, the LEDs stay on for the controller, and if you want to change this, go to the Configuration tab, LED Configuration, and toggle this setting for turn off when suspended for both this and this bottom setting. To make changes to the input display, you'll need to go back to the Configuration tab once again, go to Display Configuration, and here you can make your changes. To show all 16 buttons in the input display, you will need to update the controller, which I show shortly after, but the process isn't too difficult. But once you finish updating, go to the Configuration tab, Display Configuration, and then here you want to change the left side layout to Stickless 16, and do the same for the right side as well. To change the image on the display, click Browse, and look for your splash screen image. It needs to be black and white and 128 by 64. If you don't have any of these images, you can find them in their Discord, as a lot of the community members like to post theirs. To change how long the image shows up, you'll just change the number right here. And if you want it to display the entire time and not switch over to the input display, simply type in 0 and the image will stay. After making all your changes, go to the top right and press the reboot button, press controller, and your controller will disconnect and reconnect, and you're good to go. To update the controller, you'll first need 2 files. The first one you'll find by going to the GP2040CE website, clicking the search bar, and typing in nuke. Then you'll want to download this flash nuke file. After downloading the flash nuke file, you'll want to head over to the GitHub page, where you'll scroll down to see all of the custom versions, and you'll want to look for the Haute42 CosmoX version. The next step is to hold start, select, and up as you plug in your controller, and you'll see a new window pop up in your file explorer. And then the final steps are to drag over the flash nuke file to the newly opened file explorer tab, which will then disconnect the controller and reconnect it, where you can then drag over the new update file. The controller is a solid choice for people wanting to get into Leverless or to upgrade from what they currently have. The build quality is great, and there's a ton of customization options from the firmware, layout, RGB, and switches. Granted, you are limited to Chalk V2 style switches, but the Kitsune is also limited in that regard. For something so high quality in terms of material and feel, you would expect a higher price tag. If you only play on the PC or Switch, then you can get this for about 1/3 the price of the Kitsune, which is honestly insane. Even with an adapter for the PS4 and PS5, you'll spend somewhere around $140, which is far cheaper than the Kitsune's MSRP. If you're interested in playing Leverless or want an upgrade, I'd say it's really worth it considering the value you're getting. If you're interested in getting one, you can go to the Haute42.com website, where you can learn more about their wide range of controllers. In the top right, you can click to go to the Where to Buy section, where you can find the links to their global store, as well as their regional outlets. If you want to save on money, I would recommend the global store, which leads you to AliExpress. However, their Amazon stores do offer faster shipping. The M Plus is a serious competitor to the Razer Kitsune. It's sturdy, weighty, and it has a lot of features you don't get from the Kitsune. It's really comfortable to use, and it feels like a premium product despite it being so much more affordable. There are some differences you do need to consider, like switch feel and button size, as those do differ from standard leverless controllers. With all these considered, I definitely say you should give this a try, considering it won't hurt your wallet as much, and you can find it on Amazon so you can return it easily if you don't like it. Let me know if you have any questions, and please consider subscribing. Thank you.